The dumpster behind Romano's Italian kitchen had become my favorite spot. Not because the food was better than other places, but because they threw out their bread at exactly 9:30 every morning, still warm sometimes, wrapped in plastic that kept it clean. I was 43 years old, a licensed veterinarian with 16 years of experience, and I was timing my life around garbage schedules. That October morning started with frost on my sleeping bag and hunger sharp enough to make me dizzy. The coat I'd found 2 weeks earlier behind a Goodwill donation bin wasn't enough anymore. Winter was coming, and I knew what that meant for people like me. Some wouldn't make it to spring. I had just pulled out a half-eaten lasagna, still in its takeout container, when I heard footsteps on the wet pavement. Clean shoes, from the sound of it. Expensive ones that clicked with purpose, not the shuffle of security guards or the aggressive stomp of someone about to tell me to move along. "Michael Thompson?" The voice was professional, careful. "Michael James Thompson?" I turned around slowly, the lasagna container still in my hands. The man standing there looked like he'd stepped out of a law firm commercial. Navy suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. Silver tie, leather briefcase that gleamed even in the gray morning light. His hair was steel gray, perfectly styled despite the wind. "Who's asking?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. 3 months on the streets changes how you sound, how you stand, how you meet someone's eyes. "My name is Harold Blackstone. I'm an estate attorney from New York." He reached into his coat and I tensed until I saw him pull out a photograph. "Is this you? Taken in 2018? The photo showed me in my white veterinary coat, standing in front of my clinic, smiling like I owned the world. Back when I had a home, a practice, a wife who I thought loved me, a daughter who still returned my calls. "How did you get that?" "Your great-uncle, Rudolph Hartley, passed away last month in Manhattan. You've been named in his will." I actually laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. "Uncle Rudolph? The man sent me $5 in a birthday card every year until I turned 18, then nothing. I haven't heard from him in 25 years. Blackstone's expression didn't change. Mr. Hartley was particular about family contact, but he kept track of everyone. He knew about your veterinary practice in Cedar Falls. He knew about your divorce from Veronica. He knew about your current circumstances. My current circumstances. I looked down at myself, at the stained jeans I'd been wearing for 2 weeks, at the shoes held together with duct tape I'd found. "You mean he knew I've been homeless for 3 months?" "Yes." Blackstone's voice softened slightly. "He knew everything. And he left you his entire estate." The lasagna container slipped from my hands, hitting the ground with a wet splat. His Manhattan, penthouse on the Upper East Side, his 40-foot yacht moored in the Hamptons, his investment portfolio, his art collection, his rare books. The total value is approximately $47 million. My legs went weak. I grabbed the edge of the dumpster to stay standing. "This is a scam. You're running some kind of con." Blackstone reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. "The law firm of Blackstone, Whitman and Associates has handled the Hartley estate for 30 years. Here's my card, my bar certification number, and a copy of the death certificate. You can verify everything." I stared at the papers, the official seals, the numbers that couldn't be real. $47 million. 6 months ago, Veronica had laughed at me outside the courthouse. "No one will ever love a broke man like you," she'd said, climbing into her new boyfriend Clayton's BMW. "You're going to die alone in the street, Michael. You're pathetic." "There must be a mistake," I said. Uncle Rudolph had successful relatives. My cousin Damon works on Wall Street. Trevor is a surgeon at Mount Sinai. Why would he leave everything to me? "There is one condition," Blackstone said, and there it was, the catch that would ruin everything. "But I cannot discuss it here. Mr. Hartley left specific instructions. You must come to New York, to his penthouse, and watch a video message he recorded. Only then will you learn what you must do to claim the inheritance. And if I don't?" If I stay here? Then, in 72 hours, the entire estate transfers to an alternate beneficiary. Someone you know quite well, actually. He paused, studying my face. Your ex-wife, Veronica Thompson. The world tilted. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, feel the frost from my sleeping bag still in my bones, taste the desperation of the last 3 months. Mr. Thompson, Blackstone said, checking his watch, a Rolex that caught the weak sunlight. I have a car waiting. We can be in New York by noon. You'll have a chance to shower, change clothes, eat a proper meal. Whatever your decision about the inheritance, at least give yourself that. I looked at the dumpster that had become my breakfast spot, at the alley where I'd learned to sleep with one eye open, at the life that no longer felt like living. Somewhere in Manhattan there was a penthouse with my name on it and $47 million waiting. All I had to do was find out what my dead uncle wanted in return. Give me 5 minutes, I said. I need to tell someone I'm leaving. As I walked to find Jeremiah, the Vietnam vet who'd taught me which shelters were safe and which churches actually helped, I couldn't shake the feeling that Uncle Rudolph had been planning this for a very long time. The uncle I barely remembered, who'd sent me $5 every birthday like clockwork, had apparently been watching my entire life, waiting for me to fall far enough to understand whatever lesson he'd planned. The man in the $1,000 suit was still standing by the dumpster when I returned, looking as out of place in that alley as Hope in a homeless shelter. But he was real, the papers were real, and somewhere in New York City, my dead uncle had left me either a fortune or one last cruel joke. Either way, it had to be better than digging through dumpsters while my ex-wife told everyone I was already dead. 18 months ago, I had everything a small-town veterinarian could want. My clinic on Maple Street in Cedar Falls, Ohio, wasn't much to look at from the outside. Just a converted 2-story house with a painted sign that read, Thompson Veterinary Care. But inside, it was my kingdom. I knew every inch of those examination rooms, had personally installed the surgery lights, had painted the walls soft blue because studies showed it calmed anxious animals. The morning my life started unraveling began like any other. I was examining Mrs. Patterson's ancient tabby cat when Veronica called. We need to talk tonight, she said, her voice carrying that sharp edge I'd been hearing more often. And don't say you're working late again. Veronica and I had been married 15 years. We'd met when she brought in her roommate's sick ferret, back when I was fresh out of veterinary school and she was working at a bank. She'd laughed at my nervous jokes, said she admired a man who cared about helpless creatures. Somewhere along the way, that admiration had turned to resentment. Why can't you be more ambitious? She'd started asking about 5 years into our marriage. Look at Nadine's husband, Robert. He just made partner at his firm. They're vacationing in Cabo next month. Nadine was Veronica's best friend from college, and comparing our life to theirs had become Veronica's favorite pastime. Robert had bought Nadine a Tesla for her birthday. Robert had invested in cryptocurrency early. Robert was taking Nadine to Paris for their anniversary. I'd tried to explain that I was happy with my practice, that we had a good life. We owned our house, had 0 debt except the mortgage, and I was doing work that mattered to me. Mrs. Chen's golden retriever is alive because of the surgery I performed last week, I'd tell her. Doesn't that count for something? It doesn't pay for a vacation home, she'd reply. The night she asked for a divorce, I found her in our bedroom packing a suitcase. I've been seeing Clayton Morgridge, she announced, as casually as if she were telling me she'd changed grocery stores. He's an executive at Pharmatech Industries. He actually has ambition, Michael. Clayton Morgridge. I'd met him once at a town fundraiser, all white teeth and firm handshakes, the kind of man who wore his college ring 20 years after graduation and made sure you knew his watch cost more than your car. The divorce was brutal in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Veronica's lawyer argued that she'd sacrificed her career advancement to support my modest ambitions. Never mind that she'd quit 3 different jobs in 10 years because she didn't like her managers. The judge awarded her the house, half the clinic's value, and monthly alimony that would crush what was left of my business. My mother, Dorothy, tried to help. At 71, she was living on Social Security and my father's small pension from his 30 years at the phone company. Dad had died 5 years earlier from a heart attack, right in the middle of mowing the lawn, gone before the ambulance arrived. Mom offered me her savings, all $8,000 of it. "I can't take your money, Mom," I'd told her, sitting in her kitchen that still smelled like the apple pie she baked every Sunday. "Your father would want me to help," she'd insisted, her hands shaking slightly as she wrote the check. I took it, promising to pay her back, knowing I probably never could. My younger brother Dennis had done better for himself, managing a chain of hardware stores in Columbus. When I called to ask if he could spare a loan just to keep the clinic running until I figured things out, he'd gone quiet. "Mike, I've got my own family to think about. Maybe this is a sign you should try something else. Veronica always said you could have done better." Even Dennis had taken her side. The clinic couldn't survive the financial hemorrhaging. I had to let go of Jennifer, my veterinary assistant who'd been with me 8 years, then Marcus, my receptionist. Finally, I was doing everything myself, working 16-hour days, sleeping in the back office to save gas money. The last animal I treated was a stray dog someone found behind the grocery store, hit by a car, leg broken in 2 places. I fixed him knowing I'd never see a penny for it, knowing it would be my last surgery. The next day, the bank foreclosed. My daughter Bethany was 16 then, a junior in high school. Veronica had poisoned her against me completely. "Mom says you chose your stupid animals over your family," she'd texted me. "She says you could have been a real doctor, but you weren't smart enough." That text hurt worse than losing everything else. Within 3 weeks of the foreclosure, I was living in my truck. When that got repossessed, I had a backpack, a sleeping bag, and nowhere to go. The first night on the streets, I walked until dawn, too scared to sleep, too proud to cry. By the 3rd month, I'd learned the brutal mathematics of homelessness, which dumpsters had the best food, which corners the police ignored, which shelters wouldn't steal your shoes while you slept. The last time I saw Veronica was outside the Walmart, where I sometimes found day labor. She was walking out with Clayton, both of them carrying shopping bags, laughing about something. She saw me before I could turn away. The disgust on her face was absolute. "God, Michael, you smell like a sewer," she said, loud enough for other shoppers to hear. "This is what you've become? Thank God Bethany doesn't have to see this." Clayton put his arm around her, pulling her toward his BMW, but she wasn't done. "You're pathetic," she called back. "No woman will ever want you now. You're going to die alone, probably in some alley, and nobody will even notice for weeks." That was 6 weeks ago. Every morning since waking up on cardboard or concrete, I heard those words. She was probably right. Men like me didn't come back from this fall. We just disappeared, became statistics, names on forms that nobody read. Standing in that alley with Harold Blackstone, holding papers that claimed I'd inherited millions, I couldn't reconcile the man I'd been with what I'd become. Somewhere between the veterinarian with soft hands and a gentle voice and this hollow-eyed stranger who knew which restaurants threw out food still worth eating, I'd lost myself completely. But Uncle Rudolph had apparently been watching the whole time, waiting for me to hit bottom, preparing something I couldn't yet understand. The October morning that changed everything started with me waking up behind a loading dock, frost making my joints ache like an old man's. I wasn't even sure what day it was anymore. Tuesday maybe, or Wednesday. The days blended together when your only appointments were with dumpsters and their disposal schedules. Romano's Italian Kitchen threw out their leftover bread at 9:30 sharp. The owner, Mr. Romano, was a decent man who always double-bagged everything and sometimes left the good stuff right on top. I think he knew people like me depended on his garbage. Once, I caught him watching from the back door as I carefully sorted through the bags, and instead of chasing me off, he just nodded and went back inside. I had just found a container of lasagna, barely touched, probably from someone who'd ordered too much, when I heard those footsteps. Clean, deliberate, expensive shoes on wet pavement. After 3 months on the streets, you learn to identify danger by sound alone. "Mr. Michael James Thompson?" The man standing there looked like money itself. Navy suit without a wrinkle, silver tie that caught the light, shoes that probably cost more than I used to make in a week. He was maybe 60, silver-haired, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd never wondered where his next meal would come from. "Who's asking?" My voice came out defensive, ready to run if needed. "My name is Harold Blackstone, estate attorney from the firm of Blackstone, Whitman, and Associates in New York." He reached into his coat slowly, like he knew sudden movements might spook me. "I've been searching for you for 2 weeks. He pulled out a photograph, and my heart nearly stopped. It was me from my old life, standing in front of my clinic in my white coat, smiling like I had the world figured out. My hair was cut, my face was clean-shaven, my eyes still had hope in them. "Is this you, circa 2018? How did you get that?" The photo was from my clinic's website, which should have been deleted months ago when I stopped paying for hosting. Your great-uncle, Rudolph Hartley, passed away last month in Manhattan. Before his death, he hired private investigators to maintain current information on all family members. Blackstone's tone was matter-of-fact, like stalking relatives was perfectly normal. "You were particularly difficult to locate after you lost your permanent address." Uncle Rudolph. I had maybe 5 memories of the man, all from when I was a kid. Tall, always wearing dark suits, showing up to family gatherings but never really participating. He'd sent birthday cards with $5 bills like clockwork until I turned 18, then nothing. Mom had mentioned him occasionally, her mother's younger brother who'd made money in New York and forgotten his Ohio roots. "I haven't spoken to Uncle Rudolph in 25 years, I said. "Why would he be looking for me?" "Because he named you the sole beneficiary of his entire estate." The lasagna container slipped from my numb fingers, splattering on the asphalt. "That's impossible. I assure you, it's quite possible and entirely legal." Blackstone opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Hartley's estate includes a Manhattan penthouse valued at $12 million, a yacht moored in the Hamptons worth $3 million, an extensive art collection, a library of rare first editions, and an investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $32 million. Total estate value is $47 million, after taxes and fees." I grabbed the dumpster's edge because the world was spinning. $47 million. Yesterday, I'd fought another homeless man over a half-eaten sandwich. Now, this stranger in a suit was telling me I was rich. "This is a scam," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew no scammer would bother with someone like me. What could they possibly steal? My sleeping bag? The $14 hidden in my shoe? Blackstone pulled out documents, official-looking papers with raised seals and watermarks. "The death certificate," he said, showing me each paper. "The will, filed with the New York State Surrogates Court. My credentials from the New York State Bar. My firm has handled the Hartley estate for 3 decades. But why me?" My voice cracked. "Uncle Rudolph has successful relatives. My cousin Damon works for Goldman Sachs. Trevor, Aunt Francine's son, he's a surgeon. They actually knew him, visited him. Why would he leave everything to the family failure?" Blackstone's expression shifted slightly, something like sympathy crossing his features. "There's a condition attached to the inheritance. Mr. Hartley left specific instructions that cannot be discussed here. You must come to New York, to his penthouse, and watch a video message he recorded before his death. Only then will you learn what's required to claim the estate." Of course, there was a catch. There was always a catch. "What kind of condition?" "I'm legally prohibited from discussing it outside of the residence." He glanced at his watch, a Rolex that gleamed in the weak morning sun. "However, I can tell you that you have 72 hours to hear the terms. If you refuse or fail to appear, the entire estate transfers to an alternate beneficiary. Who? Your ex-wife, Veronica Thompson. I actually staggered. Veronica, who'd taken everything in the divorce, who'd laughed at my destruction, who told me I'd die unloved and unmourned in the street. The thought of her getting Uncle Rudolph's millions made me physically sick. Mr. Hartley was very thorough in his research, Blackstone continued. He knew about your divorce, about Miss Thompson's current relationship with Clayton Morgridge, about her recent financial difficulties since Mr. Morgridge left her 3 months ago for his secretary. Clayton had left Veronica? Some part of me, the petty part that surviving on the streets hadn't killed yet, felt a spark of satisfaction. The private jet is waiting at the regional airport, Blackstone said. We can be in New York by noon. There's a shower facility at the airport lounge, fresh clothes waiting. Whatever you decide about the inheritance, Mr. Thompson, at least give yourself a comfortable meal and a night in a proper bed. I looked around at my world. The dumpster I'd been feeding from. The cardboard I'd sleep on tonight if I stayed. Jeremiah's shopping cart in the distance. The American flag he'd attached to it fluttering in the wind. This was my life now, but it didn't have to stay that way. What could the condition possibly be? I asked, more to myself than to Blackstone. I can say only this. Mr. Hartley believed in testing character through adversity. He wrote in his final letter that he'd chosen you for reasons that would become clear. Testing character through adversity. I almost laughed. If that was the test, I'd been taking it for 3 months straight, failing a little more each day. Give me 1 hour, I said finally. I need to say goodbye to someone, and I need to think. Of course. Blackstone handed me a business card, heavy stock that felt alien in my calloused hands. The car will be waiting at the corner of 5th and Main, a black Lincoln Town car, license plate BWA 001. As he walked away, those expensive shoes clicking on the pavement, I stood there holding a business card worth more than everything else I owned combined. Somewhere in New York, a dead uncle I barely remembered had set up some kind of test, some condition that would either give me $47 million or hand it all to the woman who'd destroyed me. I found Jeremiah 2 blocks over, sorting through aluminum cans he'd collected. Hey, brother, I said. Something's happened. Either I'm about to get very lucky, or I'm walking into the cruelest joke anyone's ever played. I found Jeremiah behind the old Texaco station, sorting aluminum cans into his shopping cart, with military precision. Each can was crushed exactly the same way, organized by brand. Old habits from his army days died hard, even after 40 years on the streets. Jeremiah, I called out, and he looked up, his weathered face breaking into a gap-toothed smile. Michigan Mike, you find breakfast? Romano's usually good on Tuesdays. That's what he called me, Michigan Mike, even though I'd corrected him a dozen times that I was from Ohio. Didn't matter to Jeremiah. Everyone needed a nickname in his world. Listen, brother, something's happened. I pulled out Blackstone's business card, the paper so white it seemed to glow in the gray morning. A lawyer just found me, says my uncle died and left me money, a lot of money. Jeremiah squinted at the card, then at me. You been drinking that mouthwash again? That stuff will make you see things. I'm serious. He wants me to go to New York, today. If this is real, if even part of it is real, I might not be coming back. Jeremiah set down his cans and really looked at me. In 3 months, he'd taught me everything about surviving the streets. Which shelters had bedbugs, which ones had decent security, how to stay warm using newspapers and cardboard, where the cops would leave you alone if you kept quiet. He'd saved my life more than once, pulling me back when I wanted to give up entirely. You remember what I told you your first week out here? He asked. Don't trust anyone offering free anything. The other thing. I thought back to those early terrifying days. Every door that closes, another one's waiting to open. You just got to live long enough to find it. That's right. He reached into his cart and pulled out something wrapped in plastic, handed it to me. It was a watch, old but clean, the kind with actual hands instead of digital numbers. Found this last week, was saving it to trade, but you'll need it more than me. Rich people care about time. The gesture broke something in me. This man who had nothing was giving me one of his few valuable possessions. Jeremiah, I can't take this. You can, and you will. His voice went stern, the sergeant he'd once been showing through. And if this thing is real, if you get this money, don't you forget us out here. Don't become one of those people who crosses the street to avoid looking at what they used to be. If this works out, I'll come back for you, I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep, Michigan. Just remember, we're human. That's all any of us want, to be seen as human. I clasped his shoulder, this man who'd become my unlikely brother in the darkest period of my life, then walked to 5th and Main. The black Lincoln was there, engine running, Blackstone waiting in the back seat. The ride to the airport was surreal. The leather seats felt impossibly soft after months of concrete and cardboard. The car had heated seats, something I'd forgotten existed. Blackstone handed me a folder with documents about Uncle Rudolph's estate, pages of legal language I couldn't focus on. At the regional airport's private terminal, Blackstone led me to a lounge I hadn't even known existed. The shower facilities are through there, he said. I took the liberty of having clothes delivered. We estimated your size from old driver's license records. The shower was transcendent. Hot water that didn't run out after 3 minutes. Soap that smelled like cedar instead of industrial disinfectant. I stood under that stream for 20 minutes, watching 3 months of street life swirl down the drain. My hands looked foreign when they were clean, my fingernails human again instead of black with grime. The clothes fit perfectly. Dark jeans, a button-down shirt, a navy blazer. Nothing fancy, but clean and new. Looking in the mirror, I could almost see the man I used to be if you ignored the hollowed cheeks and the way my eyes had gone flat. On the private jet, Blackstone offered me coffee and sandwiches. Real coffee, not the instant packets I'd been stealing from gas stations. The sandwich had turkey, Swiss cheese, lettuce that actually crunched. I ate slowly, my shrunken stomach protesting the richness. Tell me about Uncle Rudolph, I said as we climbed above the clouds. The real him, not whatever story he wanted people to believe. Blackstone considered his words carefully. Rudolph Hartley was brilliant, eccentric, and completely alone by choice. He built his fortune dealing in rare books and art authentication, but his real talent was reading people. He could look at a painting or manuscript and spot a forgery instantly, but more than that, he could look at the seller and know their entire story. Yet, he chose to leave everything to a nephew he hadn't seen in decades. He kept files on every family member, Blackstone said. Your cousin Damon, the investment banker, he tracked every transaction, every SEC filing. Your cousin Trevor's surgical career, every patient review, every malpractice suit. And you, he had investigators sending reports monthly. Your veterinary practice, your marriage, your collapse. He watched me become homeless and did nothing. He was dying of pancreatic cancer. By the time you lost everything, he had weeks to live. But yes, he watched. He said suffering reveals character in ways success never can. Through the jet window, I could see New York approaching. That famous skyline reaching up like fingers grasping at heaven. Somewhere down there was a penthouse with my name on it, $47 million waiting, and a condition I couldn't imagine. Mr. Blackstone, what kind of man puts conditions on saving his own family? The kind who believes salvation shouldn't be free, he replied. Mr. Hartley often said that unearned money destroyed more lives than poverty ever did. As we descended toward Teterboro Airport, I thought about Veronica finding out about this inheritance. She'd left Clayton after he'd cheated, according to Blackstone. She was facing foreclosure on the house she'd stolen from me in the divorce. The thought of her getting this money if I failed whatever test Uncle Rudolph had designed made my stomach turn. But more than that, I thought about Jeremiah's words. Don't forget us out here. Don't become one of those people who crosses the street. Whatever Uncle Rudolph's condition was, I had a feeling it would determine not just whether I got his money, but what kind of man I'd become with it. The jet touched down smoothly, and Blackstone stood, straightening his tie. The penthouse is 40 minutes away. Mr. Hartley's video message is queued up in his study. Are you ready to learn what he wanted from you? I wasn't ready. After months of having no choices beyond which dumpster to search or which corner to sleep on, suddenly having to make a decision worth $47 million felt impossible. But I stood up anyway, adjusted the blazer that still smelled like store packaging, and followed Blackstone into whatever game my dead uncle had planned. One more thing, Blackstone said as we walked to the waiting car. Whatever you might think of Mr. Hartley after watching his message, know that he spent his final weeks perfecting this plan. He died believing he'd chosen correctly. The pressure of that faith, from a man I barely remembered, felt heavier than all the millions waiting in Manhattan. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building overlooking Central Park. Blackstone led me through a private elevator that required a special key, and when the doors opened, I stepped into a world I'd only seen in movies. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a living painting. The furniture was all leather and dark wood, the kind that whispered rather than shouted its value. Original paintings lined the walls, and I recognized a Monet even with my limited art knowledge. Mr. Hartley's study is this way, Blackstone said, leading me through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home. The library alone made me stop and stare. Thousands of books, floor to ceiling, some behind glass cases with tiny brass plaques indicating first editions dating back centuries. The study was more intimate, dominated by a massive mahogany desk and a wall-mounted screen that looked out of place among all the antiques. Blackstone gestured to a leather chair positioned in front of the screen. The video message will play once. Mr. Hartley was very specific about that. I'll be in the next room when you're finished. He pressed a remote, and the screen flickered to life. Uncle Rudolph appeared, and my breath caught. He looked exactly as I remembered, but ravaged by time and illness. His face was gaunt, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had clearly once been powerful. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, alive with purpose. "Hello, Michael." His voice was stronger than his appearance suggested. "If you're watching this, then Harold found you living on the streets, probably behind some restaurant, surviving on discarded food. I know this because I've been watching you for years, just as I watched all my relatives. But you, Michael, you were the one I was waiting for." He leaned forward, and I found myself doing the same, drawn in despite myself. "The condition for your inheritance is this. Within 5 years, you must help at least 100 people escape homelessness. Real, documented help. Not just handing out money, but providing what they actually need. Jobs, housing, medical treatment, addiction counseling, psychiatric care, whatever it takes. Harold will oversee a trust to verify each case. You'll have access to the full fortune to accomplish this, but if you fail or refuse, everything goes to your ex-wife, Veronica." I felt my chest tighten. 100 people. I thought of Jeremiah, of the elderly woman who cried over half a sandwich last week, of all the invisible souls I'd lived among. "You're wondering why," Rudolph continued. "Why this condition? Why you? Let me tell you something no one in our family knows. In 1967, I came back from Korea broken. Not physically, though I had my wounds, but mentally, spiritually shattered. I told no one I was home. I lived on the streets of New York for 2 years, too proud to ask for help, too damaged to know how to return to normal life." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "A man named Morrison found me behind his bookshop one winter morning, delirious with fever, dying. He didn't just give me food or money, he gave me a job, a purpose, a room above his shop. He saved my life, but more than that, he saved my soul. He asked nothing in return, didn't even tell me his last name for months." The camera angle changed slightly, as if Rudolph had moved closer. I built my fortune from that second chance. I became successful, wealthy, respected. But I also became paranoid, isolated, unable to trust. I watched our family from a distance, keeping tabs on everyone. Your cousin Damon, who steps over homeless people in disgust. Your cousin Trevor, who called them parasites at a medical conference I attended anonymously. Your brother Dennis, who had security remove a homeless veteran from his store's entrance last Christmas. Each word felt like a judgment, not just on them, but on who I might have been before my fall. But you, Michael, do you know what investigators reported about you? The first week on the streets, starving, scared, you found half a sandwich in a dumpster and gave part of it to an elderly woman who was crying from hunger. Last month, you spent your only $5 on antibiotics from a street dealer, not for yourself, but for that veteran friend of yours with the infected wound. You had pneumonia yourself at the time. I remembered that night. Jeremiah's leg had been getting worse, red streaks climbing toward his knee. I'd been coughing blood, but infection could kill him faster than my pneumonia would kill me. Harold has surveillance footage if you're curious, Rudolph continued. 63 separate incidents of you helping others when you had nothing yourself. You kept your humanity when you had every reason to abandon it. That's why you inherit everything. He leaned back, a slight smile crossing his gaunt face. But here's what your relatives won't know until the will is read publicly next week. Your ex-wife Veronica is facing financial ruin. Clayton Mortgage left her 3 months ago for his 26-year-old secretary. She mortgaged the house she took from you to invest in one of Clayton's schemes that went bankrupt. She's about to lose everything. I actually laughed, dark and involuntary. The irony was so perfect it hurt. If you refuse my condition or fail to complete it, she inherits everything. Imagine that, Michael, the woman who destroyed you, who said you'd die unloved in the street, becoming rich from your failure. I thought the poetry of it might motivate you. But here's the secret, nephew. The 100 people you save, that's not really the test. The test is whether you can accept help yourself, whether you can take this gift and transform it into something meaningful, instead of letting pride or bitterness destroy you. Morrison saved me, but I never really accepted it. Never let myself be grateful. Never stopped seeing myself as alone. I died in this penthouse, surrounded by treasures, but completely isolated, having pushed away everyone who tried to love me. He coughed, a rattling sound that spoke of the cancer that killed him. Don't become me, Michael. Take the money, save your 100 souls, but save yourself too. And one more thing, something I discovered only while researching Morrison after his death. His full name was Morrison Thompson. He was your grandfather, your father's father. The man who saved me was your blood, though neither of us knew it at the time. He died poor but loved, surrounded by family, everything I never had. He gave away everything he earned, helping strangers like me. My vision blurred. Grandpa Morrison had died when I was 10, but I remembered him. Quiet, kind, always slipping dollar bills into our pockets when Mom wasn't looking. So, you see, Michael, this isn't random, it's a circle closing. Your grandfather saved me, I'm saving you, and you'll save others. That's how goodness survives in this brutal world, passed hand to hand like a secret flame that refuses to die. The screen went dark, then lit up with one final message. You have 24 hours to decide, but I already know your answer. You're a Thompson. You'll help them because that's what your bloodline does, what your grandfather taught without teaching, what you learned without learning. Welcome home, nephew. The screen went black. I sat in that leather chair in a $47 million penthouse, tears streaming down my face, thinking about Grandpa Morrison saving a young veteran behind his bookshop, never knowing that veteran would one day save his grandson. Blackstone entered quietly. Mr. Thompson, what is your decision? I stood up, wiping my face, thinking of Jeremiah sorting his cans, of the elderly woman clutching her piece of sandwich, of all the invisible people waiting for someone to see them as human. "I'll do it," I said. "But not for the money, and not because of Veronica. I'll do it because my grandfather would have wanted me to, because it's what we do." Blackstone smiled, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. "Mr. Hartley said you'd say exactly that. Shall we discuss the trust structure?" I looked out at Manhattan sprawling below, all those lights representing lives, stories, struggles. Somewhere out there were 100 people I was going to save, but first I had to save myself. Uncle Rudolph was right about that. The money was just a tool. The real inheritance was the chance to matter again, to be the man my grandfather would have recognized. "Yes," I said. "Let's begin." I stood at those towering windows for a long time after Blackstone left the room, looking down at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the evening darkness. Each light represented someone's life, someone's struggle, someone's hope. 24 hours ago, I'd been digging through garbage. Now I owned this penthouse and had $47 million to change lives. The first person I called was Jeremiah. I had Blackstone drive me to a phone store to get a cell phone, then went straight back to the Texaco station. He was still there, arranging his cans for tomorrow's recycling run. "Michigan Mike," he called out when he saw me getting out of the Lincoln. "You clean up nice. That lawyer man wasn't lying?" "It's all real, Jeremiah, every word." I sat down on the curb next to his cart, still wearing my new clothes but not caring about the dirt. "I need your help." "My help? Brother, you just inherited millions. What could you need from me?" "I have to help 100 people get off the streets. Real help, not just throwing money around. You know these streets better than any social worker. You know who needs what, who's ready for help, who isn't. I want to hire you as my outreach director." Jeremiah laughed until he realized I was serious. "Mike, I haven't had a real job in 20 years. You've been doing the job for 20 years, just nobody was paying you for it. You taught me how to survive. You've kept dozens of people alive with your knowledge. I need that expertise." Within a week, I'd established the Hartley Foundation, naming it after Uncle Rudolph. The first office was small, just a converted storefront, but it was in the right neighborhood, where people who needed help could actually reach it. Jeremiah was my first hire, and his first suggestion changed everything. "Don't make them come to us feeling like beggars," he said. "Give them dignity. Give them choices." We developed a program where people could choose their path. Some needed rehab first. Others needed mental health treatment. Some just needed a chance, a job, someone to believe they could be more than their worst moment. Each person got a caseworker, but more importantly, they got a mentor who'd been where they were. The third person we helped was Agnes, the elderly woman I'd shared my found sandwich with months earlier. She didn't need much, just a safe apartment, and someone to help her navigate Social Security benefits she didn't know she qualified for. When we got her into a senior living facility with her benefits covering the cost, she cried for an hour. "I thought I'd die on the streets," she said. "I thought that was my story's ending." By month 6, we'd helped 37 people find stability. Each success was documented, verified by Blackstone's firm, but more importantly, each success was sustained. We didn't just get people into housing and abandon them. We followed up, provided ongoing support, celebrated their victories. That's when Veronica showed up. She looked different, desperate in a way I recognized because I'd worn that same expression. Her designer clothes were the same ones from our divorce, but they hung loose now. The BMW was gone. The superior smirk was replaced by something hollow. "Michael," she said, standing in the foundation's doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. "I heard about your inheritance. I heard about what you're doing. What do you want, Veronica?" "Clayton left me for his secretary. The house is in foreclosure. I've been staying with friends, but they're getting tired of me." She couldn't meet my eyes. "I was wrong about everything. You're worth 100 Claytons. You always were." I looked at this woman who'd destroyed me, who'd laughed at my ruin, who'd told me I'd die unloved in the street. The old me would have felt satisfaction at her downfall. The street me would have told her to try the dumpsters behind Romano's, see how she liked it. But the man Uncle Rudolph had challenged me to become saw something else, a human being in pain. I can't be with you again, Veronica. That bridge is burned beyond repair. I know. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking if you could maybe help me find a job, something simple. I'll work. I'll do whatever it takes. The foundation helps people experiencing homelessness. You're not there yet. I will be soon. Her voice broke. Next week, probably. I gave her the business card of a regular employment agency. They're good people. They'll help you find something. But Veronica, this is all you get from me. No money, no special treatment, just this referral. You need to rebuild your own life. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and left without another word. My daughter Bethany reached out 3 months later, but not about the money. Dad, I saw an article about your foundation, she said over the phone. About the people you're helping. Mom told me lies about why you disappeared. I should have known better, should have reached out. You were a kid. Your mother was all you had. Can I volunteer? At the foundation, I mean. I'm 17 now, old enough to help. That's how I got my daughter back. Not through millions, but through service. She came every Saturday, helping serve meals, organizing clothing donations, sitting with people and listening to their stories. She was particularly good with the younger homeless, the runaways and throwaways who trusted her in ways they couldn't trust adults. By year 3, we'd helped 86 people. Some failed, relapsed, disappeared back into the streets. That was the hardest part, accepting that not everyone could be saved, that some people weren't ready. But most succeeded, finding jobs, reconnecting with families, rebuilding lives they thought were lost forever. Then Blackstone called me with news that shook everything. Michael, I found something in Mr. Hartley's papers, a journal from 1969. You need to see this. The entry was dated December 15th, 1969. The man who saved me finally told me his full name today, Morrison Thompson. He's been like a father to me these past 2 years. He mentioned a son, Stephen, living in Ohio. I wonder if I'll ever meet his family, if I'll ever be able to repay this debt. Stephen was my father's name. There's more, Blackstone said, flipping pages. Morrison Thompson knew exactly who your uncle was. He has his own journal entry from that same day. Morrison's handwriting was shaky but clear. Told young Rudolph my name today. Don't think he realizes I know who he is. Dorothy's brother who went missing after the war. Family thinks he's dead. Won't betray his trust by telling them, but I'm glad I could help Dorothy's blood. Good boy, just lost. He'll find his way. My grandfather had known all along. He'd saved his sister-in-law's brother, never telling anyone, never taking credit. The secret created ripples across decades, ending with Uncle Rudolph saving me. Standing in that penthouse where Uncle Rudolph died alone, I realized the real inheritance wasn't money or property. It was proof that kindness creates circles, that helping others comes back in ways we never see, that love operates in shadows and decades and through people we barely know. By year 5, I'd helped 103 people escape homelessness. The foundation had grown, with other donors joining our cause. Jeremiah had become a respected expert in outreach, speaking at conferences about dignity and social services. My daughter was studying social work in college, planning to continue the mission. But the best moment came when I found an old photo in Uncle Rudolph's desk. It was from my grandfather's funeral, which I barely remembered. In the back, standing alone, was a younger Uncle Rudolph. He'd come to say goodbye to the man who saved him, even though no one knew their connection. On the back, in Rudolph's handwriting, Morrison Thompson, 1910-1985. You saved me without asking for anything. I'll pay it forward, I promise. And he had, through me, through the 100 lives we'd changed, through the thousands more, the foundation would help in years to come. The money had been the tool, But the real gift was understanding that we're all connected, that kindness travels through time, that today's homeless person might be tomorrow's savior. Uncle Rudolph had learned that from my grandfather. I'd learned it from the streets. And somewhere out there, someone we'd helped would learn it too, passing it on to someone else in need. That's how the world actually changes. Not through $47 million inheritances, but through one person helping another, creating chains of compassion that stretch across generations. My grandfather started it with a desperate veteran behind his bookshop. Uncle Rudolph continued it with his fortune and his faith in me. And now it was my turn to keep the chain going, one life at a time. Standing in that penthouse, no longer homeless but never forgetting what it felt like, I finally understood what Uncle Rudolph meant about accepting help. It wasn't weakness to take someone's hand. It was the first link in a chain that would eventually pull someone else to safety. The fortune wasn't my ending, it was my beginning. And somewhere out there, my grandfather and Uncle Rudolph were watching, satisfied that their investment in kindness had finally paid its dividends. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think differently about the homeless individuals you pass every day, then please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Real change starts with seeing people as human, with recognizing that we're all just one crisis away from needing help. Comment below with your own stories of unexpected kindness, of help that came when you needed it most. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Remember, every single person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always.